Hi, my name is Nicholas. Me and my fiancée Jessica live in Sweden and have 3 children with late infantile GM1. Hampus is 8 years old and was diagnosed in May 2018. Julia and Isabella are identical twins and were diagnosed in November 2018. Like many families affected by an ultra-rare disease, we spend a lot of time trying to find the correct diagnosis, only to find they had a fatal disease with no cure. Getting Hampus' diagnosis was difficult because it was so unexpected, but waiting for Julia and Isabella's diagnosis was worse because we knew what was at stake. In Sweden, we're the only family we know of with this disease, so naturally there is little information available. Fortunately, we found the Cure GM1 Foundation and realized that there's an active online community, and here we connected with families from all over the world. We learned about research projects into finding a cure. Some seemed to be ready for clinical trials. At the same time, we realized how many families had been waiting on trials to open for years. Our first step was deciding if we should pursue an experimental treatment once available, considering the risks involved. Early 2019, we learned that a gene therapy trial would soon open, one that could potentially stop the disease, but there was only room for a few patients. One concern with participating in a trial is, of course, if a control group is needed. Due to an existing natural history study, a control group was not necessary in this trial. I didn't know about natural history studies beforehand, but now I can truly appreciate their importance, and I'm forever grateful to those who participated. Another concern was that even if all 3 children were eligible, it might not be room for all of them. Then as parent might have to decide who should be treated and who would be left without. No one knew the exact date when the trial would open, but the medical team has set up an email list for those interested to let everyone know at the same time. That email arrived in May 2019. I immediately called to register our children, only to reach voicemail. I called again and again, same thing. I felt we were losing our chance to get into the trial. Eventually I got through and realized I had started calling 15 minutes too early. After I hung up, I figured we were probably among the earlier applicants. A few days later, we were contacted by the medical team who would start testing the children for the trial. The following weeks, we gathered all the medical records to send over to the US. We would also conduct 2 tests from Sweden. The first was the development test, where each child had to score above a specific point for their age. The second was a blood draw to test for antibodies against the gene therapy. Each of these tests could stop our children from participating. Waiting for the results was almost like waiting for the twins' diagnosis. We started to plan for participating in the trial. We had some concerns about the logistics of treating 3 young siblings. Each treatment is supposed to be separated by 3 months, and once treated, one cannot meet an untreated one without risk being exposed to the gene therapy vector. These logistics seemed impossible. The medical team had the same concerns. It was eventually decided our children could be treated within days of each other. Because of delays with shipping the children's blood samples, it took over 6 months to get their blood tested. By that time, it was January 2020, and COVID had started spreading around the world. The pandemic almost put a stop to our participations, as treatments were put on hold and traveling became almost impossible. When the US announced closing the borders towards Europe, we left home within 2 days, arriving in the US with just 3 hours to spare before the borders closed, not knowing how severe the pandemic would be, not knowing when we could return back home. COVID also forced difficult decisions upon us. The gene therapy required the children to be immunosuppressed, and the original treatment plan would put the children without an immune system at the height of the first COVID peak. We had the option to postpone everything until COVID was more under control, but it could mean Hampus would then no longer be able to participate. We decided to go ahead immediately. Because of COVID restrictions, it was eventually decided we would treat all 3 children the same day, separated by 1 hour each, and after the month of immunosuppressants, in the morning of April 28, 2020, our children all received gene therapy. As far as I know, this is the first in a gene therapy trial. The gene infusion itself was unexpectedly uneventful. 25 minutes with an IV drop and then done. But it was still a very emotional day for us. Before treatment, the most difficult thing was dealing with disease progression. It's both terrifying and heartbreaking to watch your child regress, and any new symptom or loss of skill can make it so they're no longer eligible for future trials you might be waiting for. After treatment, the disease stabilized significantly, but we're still struggling with managing 3 children with GM1. Mentally, they're all like 3-year-olds. Every 6 months, we go back to the hospital for follow-ups. From Sweden, that's a 20-hour trip with layovers. After gene therapy, with the kids' immune system being wiped out and COVID circulating, we had to stay in the US for 6 months before traveling back home. These months were both a difficult and wonderful time for us. Difficult because we're so far away from home during a global pandemic with none of our regular support, but also wonderful because we got to spend all this time together as a family. Thank you.